Welcome to a brand new episode of the South Coast Property Podcast. The South Coast Property Podcast is here to give you, the listeners, insight into the world of property on the South Coast. I'm going to be talking to experts in property, so estate agents, developers, to photographers, solicitors, and more, all in aid to help you, whether you're looking to move to the South Coast, whether you already live here and want to sell and move, or have a property and want to develop it. My guests will use their expertise and local knowledge to help you. Today's guest is Ellie Matheson, a property photographer in Dorset. Now, property photography has never been more important. It's an ever-changing industry with drones, the rise of social media, etc. So I'm going to be talking to Ellie about why using a property photographer is so valuable when it comes to selling your home, the changes she has seen in the industry, and more. So, Ellie, welcome to the South Coast Property Podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Very welcome. So, Ellie, just to begin with, could you give us an insight into how you got into property photography?
So it was roughly probably about 4 years ago. COVID had hit,
Hmm.
and I was actually working to be like a food photographer. I was working for a few local restaurants, things like that, creating content for them. I was also working part time at Waitrose. COVID hit, obviously all the restaurants shut down, so I then had to go back to working full time at Waitrose. Um, and I started looking at jobs that were kind of in the photography area that was still happening, that was still going on. And I found a job being a property photographer. So I joined a company, they trained me up, and that's kind of how it all started. Um, I was with them for, I would say, about roughly a year and a half, and then I left to go out on my own. And yeah, haven't looked back really.
Fab. So did you, I guess you had to build up quite a bit of a portfolio in terms of the properties, property photography, to
Yeah.
get picked up by other estate agents before you could go on your own, because that's obviously quite a big leap.
Yeah. So I think obviously the power of social media. I had an Instagram at the time, and I was being approached loads to kind of locally. I used to work near the Romsey area. I was predominantly based there,
Mhm.
and more local agents around Wimborne and Bournemouth. They started to approach me, as well as kind of people that had Airbnb businesses, things like that. So it became kind of prevalent that I would have had like a big client pool if I'd left. So yeah, so that's what's happened, and and then slowly, I think once you start posting things on social media, everyone just sees, and it was kind of a snowball effect. I left in the March. By May, I had people emailing me saying, "Oh, like something's happened to our photographer. We need someone ASAP." And I ended up picking up, I think, three branches of one particular estate agent, and that kind of was enough to kind of then get the ball rolling.
Right. So, Annie, when it comes to actually, photographing the property, is there a set process that you follow, or does it really vary depending on the property? Because obviously, no property is the same, but is there like a set process that you follow typically?
So if I'm meeting the vendor there, I mean, occasionally the estate agent might be with me as well, but I'll turn up with all the gear, and I'll get them to always show me around, because often if you have someone show you around, it puts them at ease.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm going to be in their property for, I don't know, an hour or so, and they'll go around and they'll often talk about things that are important to them in the property. So it might be a fireplace, or it might be a certain view out of a particular window. Um, so it just allows me to understand the property and them a bit better. Because not only am I working for the estate agent, but I'm also working for the client. It's their property, they've loved it, and you want to be able to, showcase it off to its best ability.
So I guess there's quite a bit of collaboration between you and the vendor then to get exactly also what what they want across, but actually you must be able to recognize as well, oh, that will look good.
Yeah,
Important to show that off as well.
yeah, and sometimes it's a bit of they might like something that that between us, the estate agent and I might not be the selling point of the property, but sometimes you just have to collaborate to make sure that you're capturing something for them and for the agent.
Yeah. So, Ellie, when when you're taking the photos, what are you yourself specifically looking for to make it stand out for? Because when it goes online, ultimately it needs to stand out, right? Because there's often a
Yeah.
choice. So, what are you looking for when you go to a property to think, oh, that's gonna be good?
You're looking, so obviously you want to capture all key rooms. So the kitchen, the dining room, the living room, the main bedroom, and the main bathroom internally.
Hmm.
And then if you have additional bedrooms, maybe the smallest one, um, that's maybe not the key one, but you want to capture all the key rooms. And then you then want to do the garden, the front shot, and then the back shot. Ideally, they're kind of the key catalogue of photos. You then might have additional shots of each room because you might want to capture different corners. For most properties, you'll stand in the corner as far back as you can get, and then you'll capture it from the corner to get like a nice wide angle shot.
Yeah. So, and as you know, as you are aware, I do a number of social media reels of properties and can see how important good property photographer is. But in your opinion, how can an estate agent make better use of a property photographer, and why should an estate agent use a property photographer? Because there might be people listening think, well, anyone can just take out their phone or camera and take a a photo. How can they use people like yourself better, and why should they use people like yourself?
I think in this day and age, there's so much competition. I've seen a huge rise in more solo estate agents starting up, and they're taking a lot of the market away from well-established agents because they're doing things a bit differently. Um, I think that there's a lot more of because there's so much more competition, there's so much more need to stand out. And a lot of these agents are paying for photos, and the ones that aren't, it stands out. And I think it's really important to have the photographs stand out. And I think you can tell the difference. Well, you and I have discussed, you can see the difference between one's taken on an iPhone and then one's taken on a professional camera. And I think, especially in the area we live now, properties are so expensive. And why wouldn't you want to market your property to the best of its ability? You know, you want to give yourself a fair chance.
Mm. This is kind of I don't quite get why they're not investing in a property photographer, because like you said, properties are expensive, in a lot of areas on the south coast. So it's it's worth the investment, right?
Yeah, it
Worth
is.
that investment.
And often estate agents like they'll do a deal. So maybe the vendor might front the cost for the marketing, but then later on, once they sell the property, then they'll have that cost taken off. So really the vendor it's like a cash flow thing. So the vendor will always see that value back. Um, but I don't think it makes much sense to me either. I mean, a lot now, maybe if they don't have the budget or they don't have that agreement set in place with the vendor, they might just have kind of properties over 500,000
Mm.
photographed professionally, and the rest will be done maybe with an iPhone, something like that. But you're then having consistency with your brand. You go on Rightmove, some things are shot on an iPhone, some things are shot professionally, and then some vendors where things, my house might be worth 450, but you know, I don't qualify to have the professional photos. So I think there is an inconsistency maybe with some brands at the moment. I think and hope long term that we do get over to this everything becomes professional because it will just have to be a necessity to be able to survive.
I think social media is having a big drive on this because a lot of estate agents are using social media, and if you're going to show a property on social media where anyone can see it, you want to be, showing
Yeah,
that to the best that you can.
yeah.
Um, so when you're working with estate agents, you touched on this a little bit. Working with estate agents, working with the vendor, are you in a position really to take the lead on how a property should be shown, or do you have to still be very, directed into what you take? Because again, you're using a professional
Yeah,
service. I would assume that you can kind of just take the lead a little bit. Yeah, sure, you're going to want to take photos that the vendor, they really like this
yeah.
thing in the house, so you need to show off. But do you very much go and go, do you know what?
Yes, I mean, so I mean, often I like to just be left on my own accord, and I'll go from start from the top, work my way down. I mean, I ideally, yeah, it's best just to to leave me to go and do my thing. Because yeah, like I said, I've been doing this for 4 years now. I would hope by now that I'd have it down.
So I touched on social media. Your industry has seen a lot of change in recent years. For example, there's been a huge growth in drones being used. Virtual tours is another one. How has those changes, affected your approach to property shoots?
I think, I mean, you used to have, I mean, heavily elevated photography where you'd have a camera on a pole and you'd like shimmy it up in the air. And if there was any wind, it was a bit dicey. Um, I haven't used an elevated pole in probably about 2 years now. Everything, you just do everything with a drone. And I think it's allowed properties to be photographed just to another level. And I was thinking this the other day, it just makes things so easy. And I think, I mean, especially when you're photographing waterfront properties, the shots you can capture, you were never able to capture 10 years ago. It just wasn't feasible. Whereas now I think it's just made things so much more accessible. And it's just for, well, for myself, for drone pilots, things like that, it's just so easy and it's so quick. Um, Obviously you have to go through exams, you have to, be qualified, but at the end of the day, I think it's transformed property photography as well as, I mean, virtual tours. I think in COVID they were so useful. I mean, I when I used to work for the company I did, I was doing virtual tours all the time because it helped someone. They didn't have to come and view the property; they could just view it using that platform. And we've seen a massive rise in video being used. Video now, especially for social media, it's just kind of agents now will have video just for them, for their own content, not even of the property. It'll be mainly a video of, of them just in the house because it's just great for social media. That's what seems to really be getting the traction at the moment. So I think there is this huge rise in kind of video and how that's now being used. And that's just as important as the photography. I saw a video I did last week. The agent had posted it on his social media, and like the following day, and the property sold within 24 hours just through social media, just from that video. And that just shows the power of it, really.
I think two things. One, I think, yeah, drones show off the property in an amazing way, particularly where we are. There are a lot of beautiful properties with um, vast land
But
that they're on.
yeah,
You want to show that off, and the best way to show it off is up in the air. So I think, yeah, and that's what people, vendors and estate agents, that's what they're paying for. That's what they're buying when they use a property photographer. It's that expertise to use this technology in the right way. That's where the investment goes. And for anyone listening looking to sell, you know you need to be looking at estate agents and how they show off these properties. What, who are they using? What are they using? And yeah, social media.
Yeah,
I think there's a big distinction actually in a number of areas on the south coast of who uses it more and who uses it better.
yeah,
Um, and you're absolutely right. It's become a huge thing, almost. I don't know if it's out of nowhere estate agents using social media so much, but it seems to have had a real rise in recent times. And you're right, look at that. Someone's bought it off social media. I see a number of
yeah,
estate agents doing online exclusives. There's a lot of new ways to list and sell properties now. And, you know, if you're a vendor looking to sell and you're using estate agents that's not using that,
yeah.
you could be losing out or you could be losing time. Um, so yeah, social media is a massive one, definitely.
Yeah, I also think it's risen because we've had a lot of property shows. You look at all the things coming off of
Yes.
Netflix, even, UK, there's been lots of property shows, and the property shows aren't really about the properties, it's about people. It's about making a brand for yourself. It's, people are buying into you. And
Yes.
this kind of goes back to that kind of solo agent where they're kind of rising above all the kind of well established ones because they're doing things differently, and they're creating this buzz and this kind of new wave of doing things, and I think it's having a huge impact.
That's a really good point because often people into people more, more than anything. So if you are looking to get into property, become an estate agent, build your own brand, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah, you do see the shows on Netflix. I'm trying to think of the guy in New York, but his name escapes me. But he's
Oh, Sirhan.
so yes, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, he's a massive brand, but people will be going to him because it's him. They recognize him.
Yeah.
They know how he works. I think yeah, it's a massive thing now um, in our industry. Because you're right, there are a lot of solo agents out there doing really good work. Uh,
Yeah. And
they get it.
um yeah, and they've just I think it's just really interesting. I had a friend who's just become an estate agent in the pool area. And I remember thinking, gosh, there's so much competition. I'd be really interested to see how well he does. And he's done brilliantly. He has so many listings coming on. And again, he's utilizing social media. Um, he's doing the videos, he's doing the reels, he has a professional photographer. And it's just really interesting to see how even I had doubts, but yeah,
Mm.
it's this new wave of doing things.
Absolutely, absolutely, and leading on from that, really, one of the goals of the podcast is to give advice, and so obviously your expertise in photography will help people sell their home. Photos
Yeah.
are going to attract the buyers. So, in your opinion, what's the best advice you can give to someone looking to sell?
Research your agent. I mean, I do think it is important to try and get someone that's doing things slightly differently because they're probably a bit more kind of aggressive when it comes to being hungry for that sale.
Mhm.
They're kind of pushing things, doing things, new, better. So I would just really try and look into your agent. Obviously, older generations are probably not on social media, so that's a bit harder. But I'm seeing a lot of things now where family members are actually like younger ones, they're arranging for the right agent to come on. So look into your agent, prepare your house. I can't tell you how important it is to, okay, if you're going to, if you're wanting to sell, clean the house, look at things that maybe you could hide in the garage, or that third small bedroom, you could always not have that photographed and you could hide bits and bobs in there. But I would just say, just take it, not that people don't, but try and take it seriously. Look at the property and think, how can I showcase my property to the best of its ability? Ask the photographer, if you have a professional come over, when you show them around, ask them, oh, can I hide this, could I hide that, is there anything I could do quickly to make the property look any better, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to give advice. Um, I mean, depending on what time of the year it is, you have your garden. Often from October till about March, everyone says to me, "Oh, the garden doesn't look great." It is what it is. Everyone putting their property in the market at this time of the year, they're all in the same boat. You know, just try and do a general tidy up, just make sure things are kind of neatly away, and that's the best you could do. And make sure cars are off the drive. No one wants a car on the drive unless it's, I don't know, a Ferrari and it's supposed to be there. No cars on the drive.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I knew about making the house, tidy, presentable. I've heard before about, photos and real personal things to put away because people kind of
Yeah,
view the property, they want to imagine themselves and they want to imagine their photos, their things in
yeah,
the property. Um, the garden's a big one because it's the first impression, right? When you turn up to a property, it's kind of
yeah.
one of the first impressions. But the cars is an interesting one. I didn't
I
know.
mean, I mean that's mainly for photos. Obviously, when other
Mm,
people come and view it,
yeah,
that's fine. But yeah, for photos, no cars on the drive, please.
I mean we talk about it, but I have seen photos. Admittedly, I don't think I've seen any properties local like this, but there's been photos showing rubbish and there's just so much stuff in
Yeah,
the kitchen in particular, and you're just thinking, why would you even photo it?
yeah,
Why
yeah,
why would you even take the photo?
yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've obviously photographed properties, and I think, oh, do they even know? Like, do they know I was coming, or so sometimes, I think maybe things get lost in translation where maybe the house isn't prepped, and I have to photograph it how it is. I can't come back every time, so it is important just to try and give it its best shot. It's difficult if you have a tenanted property and it's left to the tenants to try and sort the property out. Um, Things like that, I can understand that maybe the house wouldn't be at its best, but that's kind of the only place I would say is
Yeah.
the excuse.
No, I think I think you're spot on. I think what people have to remember is they're selling for someone to move in, So when someone comes to visit, they want to see it kind of almost as blank as possible, really. So like I said, they can imagine themselves living here, you know.
Yeah,
They don't want to see you living here because they might want to buy it from you, They want to see it.
yeah,
And then so they can picture their stuff on the walls or whatever it may be. And I think, that is the key really when you're looking to sell. Yeah, it sounds obvious. Get your property ready, get it ready.
yeah.
Really, some people don't. But
Yeah.
I think that's good advice for anyone listening out there. So, Annie, since you became a property photographer, what have been the standout highlight for you working in the industry?
I think photographing some of the mega homes down at Sandbanks.
Hmm.
Um, there were quite a few which sold. I photographed a apartment. It wasn't the penthouse. It was beachfront, and it sold for like a record amount. I think it was like 3 million, and it beat records in Miami, New York. Worldwide records for the square footage of the property. Um, and, I photographed one that was 15 million that's been on the market. That was also featured in the Sunday Times. Um, I think kind of things like that I find were goals of mine many years ago, and I never thought they'd be achievable. And it quickly happened, and that was amazing. And I think it's just it's rare. Obviously, for the place that we live, the properties are extremely expensive, but most photographers will never get those opportunities to photograph properties like that. So I do feel like it was very fortunate that I have had that opportunity. I have seen my work featured, and the Daily Express, the Daily Mail, Sunday Times. I think things like that. It was a huge achievement.
It's very cool. I think it's on your Instagram page for anyone
Yeah.
who you sort of the amazing property that you've photographed. So Ellie, for 2025, what's in store? What's in store for you?
I'm not quite sure at the moment. I think the goal would be to potentially photograph things internationally. So when I was in Dubai, there was maybe an opportunity that I could work with estate agents out there. So to maybe be able to go international and photograph some mega homes, that would kind of be a really big box ticked. I would also love to be doing a bit more stuff in London, maybe Manchester as well. Just try and travel a bit further and work for maybe a few more special properties that kind of really want that um, luxury, property photography.
Wow, I love the sound of that. I mean, Dubai. I can't imagine. Can't imagine you'll be short of amazing properties to photograph there. So that sounds very exciting, and certainly will beat the weather that we have here in England.
Yeah, it's the weather I'm trying to get away from, really.
So, Ellie, for anyone looking to find you and work with you, where do they need to go?
I'm only on Instagram. So it's just Ellie Matheson Photography. And yeah, just look me up on there, give me a follow.
Ah,
And yeah,
brilliant.
the more followers the better.
And Ellie, lastly, what do you enjoy most about the South Coast?
I mean, it's got to be the beach. I feel like now this time of the year, it's kind of like I'm gearing up for it to hit April, those nights to become longer, to go and watch the sunsets down at the beach, fish and chips, get the paddleboard out. Um, yeah, I just think it's just living by the sea. It's that lovely coastal lifestyle.
It is amazing. Brilliant. Ellie, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
No, thank you for having me.